The Chariot of God, Mercava, is an ancient term in the Hebrew language. It originated in the biblical writings of prophets such as Ezekiel and Izaiah, and it refers to a celestial revelation of God's chair of honor, a sanctuary where the cherubim, the wheels, the sacred livings, and the names of God are located. The chariot is revealed in a mental drawing, a dream or a vision, through symbols and signs. It appears as a complex three-dimensional structure, accompanied by fire, lights, electricity, lightings and sounds. Merkava has several aspects: linguistic, philosophical, formal, geometric, symbolic, and informative. Incorporating all the facts and insights may lead us to the original and precise meaning of the term. Let us start with the linguistic and philosophical aspects of the Hebrew language, and do so against the background of drawings of the chariot in connection to sacred geometry. We'll examine it in two-dimensional plane and three-dimensional sphere. See a Gimatric dialogue between Elohim and Anochi, related to the transition from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. We will look at the throne of honor, the image of Yehovah, observe a decimal nonagon, where God signed and sealed all his names: Anochi, Adonai, Yehovah, Elohim, Shaddai, Metatron, plus the 22 Hebrew letters. Since Hebrew is a mathematical language on a decimal basis, we'll use decimal geometry to see how it functions naturally, scientifically, and accurately in dimensions, numbers, and words. Let's go back to the linguistic aspect and study of the 3 root letters of the word Merkava: Resh, Kaf, Bet. In Gimatria, they sum up to 222. Bet, Kaf, Resh form words such as Rechev, meaning vessel or vehicle, Rechev Israel, and Barech, bless, and Kruv, cherub, the singular of cherubim, and Kvar, the Babylonian river Kvar, where divine visions occur. In any order of letters, their Gimatric sum remain the same. On the banks of river Kvar, the Chariot of God is revealed to prophet Ezekiel. Quote, "And I'm inside the Golah by the river Kvar." 222 is the linguistic framework and the decimal source of the Merkava. Ezekiel wrote, "And I am inside the Golah." But Golah emerges from Gala, Nigla, Hitgalut, meaning revealed, revelation, the appearance of something which was hidden before. Golah is a new vision, a sudden understanding. Golah is the beginning of Geula, redemption. If we add Aleph to Golah, we achieve Geula. As we see, Aleph is flowing with river Kvar, which is being revealed, Nigla, to this day. It still flows in the realm of mathematical decimal foundations of Hebrew. Golah, Megala, Geula, and I am inside the Golah, in the place that reveals Geula, redemption, of the soul through the language, by understanding the interconnectivity between the Hebrew language, mathematics, and geometry. River Kvar is also Rechev, vessel, the vessel of Israel, which carries the Hebrew language on earth. Kvar is also Kruv, cherub. As promised by God, I will talk to you from among the cherubim. Karev, or Harkev, indicates Murkavut, complexity, assembly, the act of putting together, or Harkava, combining. And indeed, Kruv is made up of 111 plus 111, meaning of 2 letters, Aleph plus Aleph, that represent the decimal count, since Aleph is built from 1 units, 1 tens, and 100s, and Elef, 1000, is Aleph again. This Gimatric analysis clarifies the decimal basis of the letters, and declares that this is the DNA of the Merkava, the chariot or vessel. This plan describes the chassis, the structure or the skeleton of the chariot, that carries information in words and numbers, conveys textual and quantitative, linguistic and mathematical knowledge, and necessarily geometric information, which is the visual side of mathematics. The chariot grows from a decimal mathematical truth, since Hebrew is the primordial chariot from which the golden ratio grows. 1.618 is known as a cosmic law of nature, and one can see how the letter Aleph actually creates the golden ratio and attaches it to the DNA of the vessel. This is the geometric molecule of the Merkava, and this is one of the reasons why Hebrew is considered the natural language and not man-made. It is engineered in such a sophisticated manner, way above human capabilities even today, so it is possible that it came down to Adam, like the spacecraft, and we Hebrew speakers of today can only reverse engineer it, learn, copy, and rebuild. So Hebrew is a self-proclaimed divine scientific language designed to connect Hebrew speakers to the rational, to the intelligence of the Supreme, to natural truth and eternal laws, facts rather than religion, to indisputable written proofs rather than rabbinic opinions or interpretations. In other words, the language connects to the divine, and Merkava is the state of mind of this divinity, the beginning of Hebrew thought. Bless, 222, is the root word that opens the blessing of the priests. May Jehovah bless you and keep you. Indicates, first of all, the knowledge of the chariot and the blessing. Bless is the vessel. So far, we have seen how letter Aleph builds the root of the chariot, from which words flow like river, water, and reflect godly sights and heavenly images. Ezekiel uses the image of water since even in reality, a mirror image of the sky is reflected on the surface of the water. As King David wrote, "May God guide me on calm water, for the sake of finding His name." And as the heavens open, mathematical, geometric, and linguistic structures emerge, reflecting natural divine wisdom in Hebrew. The use of water stems from the fact that water is an electric conductor. It carries memory, retain information, and change their molecular structure according to sound wave, and oscillations form on the surface of water supersymmetrical geometries. The primordial Hebrew river, flowing in Bavel, Babylon, sprout in the Garden of Eden, and was well known to Adam, who was raised in this linguistic garden in order to master the language. The phrase river kvar in Gimatria sum up to 477, which is also zeat, sweat, and Aleph 111 is the Gimatria of apecha, your nose. So when Adam heard the words, "By the sweat of your nose will you eat bread," understandably it meant, with the help of river kvar, sweat, and Aleph, your nose. This was the friendly advice Adam received from God when he parted from God and left Eden towards sweat of your nose. In other words, towards river kvar, sweat plus Aleph, your nose. And God added, "Until you return to the Adamah, earth, for out of it you were taken." And Adamah is round like planet Earth. Adamah, in Gimatria 50, will serve as a radius. And when we examine the circular face of Adamah with diameter 100, it becomes clear that it is a sacred ground, as demonstrated by the symbol Star of David, where the two-dimensional plane is dominated by Elohim 86, the nature, and the three-dimensional space is dominated by Anochi 81, I am the Lord. Ki li haaretz, because the Adamah is mine, said God. Indeed, the same Adamah, radius 50, as seen in the decimal nonagon, is governed by all the names of God. Anochi, 81, I am. Adonai, 65, my Lord. Elohim, 86, the nature. Yehovah, 26, Jehovah. Metatron and Shaddai, 314, as the circumference. Surely Adamah belongs to God. His names are all over. The gods as we see were here long before Adam. So far, we can understand the phrase, by the sweat of your nose will you eat bread until you return to Adamah, as a friendly advice, a guideline, a suggestion to dive deeper into the linguistic domain, since the purpose of any language is to transfer knowledge, and only knowledge. Hence, the expulsion from Eden probably aimed at teaching Adam responsibility, maturity, and reliability. The Hebrew language is not intended to create religion, not to compel annual rituals, spread fear or false promises. The purpose of language is to communicate logic and develop the human mind. This is God's will, and the reason He placed Adam in the linguistic garden of letters and numbers, where he was expected to work, le'ovda, in Gimatria 111, meaning Aleph, and to keep 575 equals 10, Asara, the decimal counting system. In simple words, Adam was to learn and retain the knowledge related to the Hebrew language, Aleph to work, and the decimal system 10 to keep. Therefore, the tree of life is a decimal tree, 10 sephirot, and it grows in the Garden of Eden next to the tree of knowledge, meaning science and technology. The fruit of each tree is data, information, food for thought, which is processed in the mind, inside the head, above the lips. The fruit is not processed in the guts, as if it's an apple sliding down to the bottom end. So, when Adam and Eve's inner eyes opened, meaning the third eye, they left the garden with a toolbox, a Hebrew think tank, that enabled them to continue and discover the potential hidden in this linguistic garden, to acquire the knowledge of the decimal system and the Hebrew alphabet. This is the language God created His world with and spoke to Adam. In this language His prophets dreamed, and in this language they wrote. Hebrew seems to be a natural selection of a long-lasting communication channel, chosen by nature as the linguistic vessel of the decimal logic, which is revealed by letters, by Aleph rather than by Apple. ALP in Hebrew, Aleph, or APL, as in Apple. Indeed, same letters, but different meanings. The later word became a diversion, a fake or mistake, historical, mysterious agenda lost in translation, or not a trick of nature so perfectly hidden since the days of the Tower of Babylon, when all languages got confused and scattered upon the earth, completely misunderstood. Apple, written in Hebrew letters, means afel, dark, or dim. There is no real ground for an apple tree in the Hebrew Garden of Eden. The Hebrew fruit in Eden bears knowledge, expands awareness and consciousness. It is an eye-opener, literally. But the Christian depiction of an apple tree misleads millions with false information, with translation that is tailored for the benefit of organized church and its paid artists, who simply wishes to preserve ignorance. It is not the fall of Adam at all, but rather his ascension. The Hebrew Bible was edited and diverted by Christian bankers who didn't understand even one word of Hebrew, yet they managed to extract money and accumulate a huge wealth by simply spreading false promises, allegedly extracted from the Hebrew Bible. And they did so without understanding one word in Hebrew, and they still do so even today. Obviously, this has just been proven. So Adam didn't eat any apple, yet gave birth at the age of 130, the Gimatric value of Sinai, symbol or letter. This means that Mount Sinai, or godly revelation to Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Jacob's ladder, the chariot or the temple, all reflect and describe the same divine space expressed in Hebrew and seen in decimal geometry. The linguistic chariot represents the formative knowledge of the ancient Logos in biblical Hebrew, the holy language, the language of creation and of Brit Lashon, the covenant of language, that God signed with Hebrew speakers. The chariot is a transcendental object of hyperconnectivity that grows out of a multidimensional, recognizable, and measurable matrix, revealing the decimal structure of the language. The geometric structure of the Hebrew language reflects its linguistic structure, and language, Safa 385, is Shekinah, the divine presence. Both preserve the decimal count, since 385 is the sum of the first 10 digits in a square. So Shekinah and language are bound to the decimal system. The chariot is a communication channel. It broadcasts compressed information, exhibits a common space where words, numbers, and shapes that function in simultaneous harmony. They derive from the natural sciences and decimal arithmetic, and combine scientific knowledge with sensual linguistic poetics. The linguistic chariot may not be a tangible object, but a calculated mental vision. It is written Cherubim, by an act of calculation, Chashev. You must do them, meaning the Cherubim must be understood from Chashev, the root word of Cheshbon, mathematics, and of Machshavot, thoughts. Each cherub has 2 wings, Aleph plus Aleph. They are a result of thought and calculation, Ma'aseh Chashev. Definitely not a childlike wooden statue with wings sitting on a crate in front of a similar statue with wings. This has nothing to do with the image of God, nor with his language, nor with the Holy of Holies, or the covenant of language. The very idea of describing divinity in the image of man comes from an overdeveloped imagination of man incapable of reading or understanding Hebrew texts. The cherubim are an act of arithmetic and not a winged child. Cherub is a linguistic instruction. Karev or harkev means to combine letters into words. Cherubim are present in the Holy of Holies, in the metaphysical realm, with divinity, way above the material world. Communication with God in the Holy of Holies requires the highest and purest thought human can reach, in a place of contemplation, reflection, concentration, and communication with the Holy Spirit that invented the Hebrew language. And one can only do so through language itself. The only way to understand the words of God is to master the language God used, Hebrew. Not through sculpting the torso and the bottom of your neighbor and adding wings to hide the face. The cherubim are an act of chashev, of thinking, combining and counting letters and numbers. To quote God's instructions, the cherubim, ma'aseh chashev, you must do them. Surely chashev, thinking, or calculating, has nothing to do with Birdman, nor with golden wings. Therefore, sculptures are totally forbidden. The Hebrew Bible is a written book, and not a collection of sculptures in a museum. The written words are totally against such artistic reductions, against meaningless images that confuse and raise more questions, rather than provide intelligent answers regarding the nature of God, of existence, or of the role of language, or of man. The God of Israel is a cosmic scientific intelligence that transmits knowledge through language, and only through language. Even his angels, in Hebrew, malach, means maleh kaf. The letter kaf written in full kaf, plus pei, 20 plus 80 equals 100. And so again, even malach directs us back to the decimal system and the linguistic source in order to teach us how to think correctly. In fact, it all comes back to the domain of language and mathematics. The whole biblical story exists only in the metaphysical realm, in writing. Therefore, the chariot is not only an abstract projection of the Spirit of God, but a conduit as well. In 2D, it functions as a fax machine, printing readable text signed by Elohim 86. I shall talk with you from among the cherubim, said God. And in 3D, we find the signature of Anochi 81 on all 12 ribs of the double tetrahedron. Hebrew has its own natural, mathematical, and geometric illustration. It is scientific and accurate. Even the transition from 2D plane to 3D space is governed by Anochi and Elohim. So far, the facts show that Hebrew is a transparent language that reveals its internal structure. One can see the sounds that were heard or read in Mount Sinai. Sinai 130 is also semel, symbol. Therefore, Mount Sinai is a mount of symbols, and symbols emerge from math and geometry, the building blocks of the chariots. River Kvar 222 flows through Babylon, and Babylon, Bavel, means balev, in the heart. And lev, heart, 32, is made up of 22 letters plus 10 sephirot, 32 paths of wondrous wisdom, 32 tools of creation. 32 is the Gimatric value of kavod, honor, and indeed Mercava reveals God's throne of honor. This is Kiseh HaKavod, the chair of honor, and the spirit of Yehovah, diameter 240, define the space where the throne of honor is revealed. The original term in Hebrew is Merkava, Lashchina, chariot of Shekinah. And Shekinah 385 is Safa, language. This linguistic chariot carries objective knowledge and functions as a portal, a gateway, to a higher realm of thinking, a realm of scientific insights that flow down in plenty from top to bottom, but also function in reverse. By raising people from the bottom up, potentially and practically, the chariot creates teleportation. It raises Enoch to heaven. It communicates with prophets and teleports them to upper worlds, to cities in the sky, where they are asked to measure with a scale rod. And so, the chariot is a mental stargate, a gateway to the star. And star, Kochav, is made up of Kaf, Vav, 26, Yehovah, and Kaf Bet, 22 Hebrew letters. Star literally means Yehovah, plus 22 holy letters, and again, we're back with God and His language. So as we see, Hebrew fills the entire space. It is solaced in 3 domains and simultaneously actualize in prose, arithmetic, and geometry. So if Hebrew is the language of nature, what is the purpose of humanity after Adam? Why are we still able to process this language? It is written that God asked the prophets just to watch, to notice, and understand. Ben Adam, צופה נתתיך לבית ישראל, ושמעת מפי דבר, והזהרת אותה ממני. Son of man, I have appointed thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. And when thou shalt hear a word at my mouth, thou shalt give them warning from me. So it seems to be that in order to understand God, it's not enough to speak the language. One needs to understand the deeper meaning of each word. His language requires deep study, observation, and calculation. The language of God was first given to Adam to work and to keep. To work, 111, Aleph, points at studying the Hebrew letters, and to keep, in Gimatria 575, means asara, 10, indicates the decimal system, 10 sephirot, 10 commandments, or 10 plagues. In short, the decimal system. The Chariot of God is a dynamic, celestial play or vision that harmoniously combines forms, words, measurements and numbers, language, arithmetic, and geometry, revealing the logical method underlying the natural language, exposing facts, not beliefs, facts that can be seen, measured, and read. Historically, the Hebrew language was given in writings only 3,300 years ago. It appears on the historical stage of the ancient world relatively late. At the time, civilizations already flourished in Mesopotamia and Egypt. It seems that Hebrew writing was introduced to humanity in order to reflect an alternative explanation to reality, to show the scientific reality in ways that can be perceived, to provide a system of logic that can be proved in technical terms. Now, we know that Hebrew is a sustainable, timeless language at the crossroad between science and spirituality, and we can easily establish a causal explanation to defend its case. It carries constant meaning for thousands of years and is unlikely to disappear since it is anchored in mathematics, known to Adam through Moses to current days, as well as Gimatria, which is as old as nature and creation. Hebrew entered the historical stage in order to compete with other languages on virtues such as precision, longevity, the ability to ascend, to penetrate and influence with written words, symbols, numbers, shapes, and dimensions. Hebrew participates in the struggle amongst languages on the definition of reality. It can undergo philosophical analysis at any time, since it is a sustainable language. As we see, the linguistic tree still grows in the ancient Garden of Eden. The eternal self-sustained Hebrew vessel probably runs on zero-point energy, exists in empty space, full of meanings, never aging, but remaining vivid forever. One of the 10 Commandments says, "Thou shalt not make unto thee any statue or picture." Why is a rhetorical question. Perhaps Hebrew does not need human imagination. After all, it has its own natural illustration in decimal geometry, whether or not anyone notices. Hebrew exists in the laws of nature, math, and geometry, regardless of the existence or absence of human beings. After all, it preceded Adam. It served as the tool of creation, and ever since appears in natural art of decimal geometry, the domain in which Jehovah chose to sign his names. Hebrew teaches a method of organizing knowledge and provides scientific tools for inquiry, ways to ascertain and define the meaning of names or words that simultaneously appear in language, arithmetic, and geometry. Plato believed that geometry reveals the world of ideas that correspond to the celestial array and the structure of the universe. He claimed that we can learn with our rational mind from the hidden geometric structures. Indeed, in the ancient schools of philosophy, every candidate was required to know geometry, or else he was prohibited from even entering the academy. The Hebrew language takes part in the struggle for deep knowledge. At the same time, it proves that there is no contradiction between science and theology, in the original sense of the term, since Hebrew theology is broadcast on the Natural Sciences channel. There it performs and can be seen. So perhaps the introduction of Hebrew Torah in writing 3,300 years ago aimed to create a breakaway civilization, to accelerate human evolution, or to stop its devolution. In any case, the divine names that exhibit godly harmony in geometry show God's hegemony over his language, and the letters were created to perpetuate his names. These are the exact words of God. We should only search for his names in the place God chose to seal them. This is the highest command. The will of God is that his people, those who speak his language, will find and recognize this place. המקום בו בחרתי לשים שמי, לשוכנו, שם תדרשו, שם תבוא. Meaning, search for the place I chose to put my name. And names are written with letters. Since God chose the decimal geometry as the chosen place for his names, we can try to understand what it means, and perhaps reset our understanding of the nature of God and the divine language of nature. As we see, decimal geometry is a visual description of the place God chose to seal his names. In God's words, Adam tzofen et aticha, meaning Adam, I appoint you as an observer, a watcher, to appreciate the greatness and ingenuous of God's names in Hebrew, and perhaps to thank him for sharing. The difference between the gods of Israel and the gods of ancient civilizations is a significant one. The God of Israel is a series of names which effortlessly unite to form internal cohesion and aesthetic harmony. They cooperate simultaneously for the same purpose. As seen in a decimal nonagon, the divine alliance exhibits its members name by name: Anochi 81, Elohim 86, Yehovah 26, Adonai 65, my Lord, Shaddai or Metatron 314. All the names constitute wholeness, create oneness, exist in peace and hold reality with logic, construct and describe one scientific truth. This is the godly dialogue we're witnessing here, and this is in stark contrast to the ancient gods of Mesopotamia, Egypt, or Greece, who were human-like gods, shaped like man. They had internal and ideological conflicts. They argued and fought, killed each other, kidnapped, raped, and bore children, semi-gods or half-humans. Among the idols of ancient civilizations, there is nothing in common but a conflict of interests, competition, and jealousy, and indeed all faded away and disappeared from the face of the earth, along with the language they spoke. Only in the last 200 years, few scholars managed to decipher cuneiform and hieroglyphs, and still, very few today are able to read or understand these ancient languages. In contrast, Hebrew brought to the ancient world a belief that is true and scientific in the basic sense. It opened the door to new evidence and better arguments, and it has held on as is for thousands of years. Although it has also temporarily disappeared, it is now fully revived. For about 2,000 years, Hebrew remained underground and only in handwritten books. It was not a widely spoken language, and very few knew how to read. There was no Bible in every household or in public domains until the invention of printing some 400 years ago. Since then, the Bible became a bestseller, and thanks to that, many have been converted to become modern Hebrew speakers. But the ability to speak Hebrew does not indicate the understanding of the biblical text. At the level of simplicity, the text may be understood, but the hidden secrets and the deep knowledge remained in the Kabbalah, which essence is the decimal tree of life combined with the names of God. So not only do the names of God of Israel appear in synchronicity and create harmonious symphony, but also their language, Hebrew, is built as a mathematical and geometrical composition, a silent movie with Hebrew subtitles. One can read the voices. Divinity and language derive from the same celestial order of permanent knowledge that reveal the metaphysical elements of language and explain how to discover the truth by veritas, that is, through a mirror image that reflects a mathematical, scientific truth, revealing the natural structure of the universe through language and form. The chariot is a natural, mathematical, calculated linguistic transparent temple that can be scientifically examined with a decimal scale. It carries the names of God and describes a temple in heaven. Since the word demat, image, 444, means mikdash, temple, the chariot is the temple of God in the image of God. Demat Elohim. It reveals its structure and functions, and most of all, it shows us what it carries on board. Who the passengers are. The chariot of nature carries the names of God. It is the chair of honor, the place God chose to sign His names, in the domain of Chokhmah and Binah, wisdom and intelligence, science, arithmetic, language, and geometry. This is the city I chose to put my name. Kings, chapter 11, verse 16. Is it possible that Ezekiel's chariot was a manifestation of a physical phenomena? A real aerial vehicle like a spaceship or Vimana? The answer is yes, but we can't validate it. Although we see alien spaceships even today and follow the geometric messages they communicate for the last 40 years in crop fields in UK and around the world, yet the only thing we know for certain and can prove is that first and foremost, the Mercava is a mental scientific geometric vision in Hebrew. But the fact that the names of God compose the structural elements of this geometric machine indeed suggest connectivity among natural forces and vectors that potentially can affect space-time, create a wormhole or a portal. Perhaps the technology in ancient days reached the point of singularity. And this hidden plan might suggest a possible quantum leap into heaven through thought control or teleportation. Experiments with Marco Rodin electromagnetic coil based on the nonagon resulted in levitation. So practically, there's more to this plan than meet the eye. After all, Enoch was taken by God. Prophets were taken for a ride aboard celestial craft. Thousands of people living today were abducted by aliens and taken aboard spaceships. Yet all we see here is the arsenal of the names of God present in decimal geometry. And this is indisputable fact. Build me a temple, and I will dwell within them. So we can conclude that decimal geometry verifies the biblical text. Thou shalt look for the place where I chose to put my name, said God. There you must go. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse E. And you shall eat before Yehovah your Elohim in the place which he chose to dwell his name in. There you must come, for the sake of learning, to see Yehovah your Elohim all the days. Leman tilmad lir'a et Adonai Elohecha kol hayamim. Seeing all the days, said God. Kol hayamim. Kol equals 50, and yamim equals 100. Let's see the place where all the days show us the names of God, as he promised, where the radius is kol, all, 50, and the diameter is yamim, days, 100, for the sake of learning, to see, actually seeing Yehovah, Elohim, all the days. Since what is revealed to us is a precise mathematical and geometric truth, the facts validate the claim that the gods of Israel dominate the realm of wisdom and intelligence. They do not fight over metaphysical territory or ownership, but simply appear alongside each other, unite as one logistic aerodynamic array that can always be seen because geometry has not changed since the founding of Hebrew. This decimal account is a natural choice, as ancient as Hebrew. The decimal system, by the way, is not exclusive to Hebrew, and it was known in the ancient world, even to the Greeks. For example, the name Atlas in Gimatria 100 perpetuated the decimal system as the chosen mathematic of perfection attributed to a civilization living in Atlantis, named after Atlas. The city was made up of concentric islands separated by wide moats. The Legend of Atlantis is a story about a moral, spiritual people who lived in a highly advanced utopian civilization, but they became greedy, petty, and morally bankrupt. And the gods became angry and brought a cataclysmic destruction. So the utopian city sunk into the sea 10,000 years ago. Still, Atlas 100 in Gimatria indicates that the Greeks recognized the decimal count as representing perfection. To further prove the claim that there were agreements between Hebrew and Greek regarding words of similar Gimatria and meanings in Hebrew, we'll take androgynous in Gimatria 390 is the value of male and female, in Hebrew, zachar v'nekeva. 390 is also heaven, shamayim, and indeed, heaven has no gender. They are male and female, androgynous, sexless or both. This was a mutual understanding between the languages, or the word noti in Gimatria 75 is Laila in Hebrew. Indeed, noti remained as night to this day, or ego in Gimatria 10 confirms the decimal system and the 10 Sephirot of the Tree of Life as related to man as a mini-cosmos. Ego 10 means I. To conclude, let's see the beginning. Alpha Beta is similar to Aleph Bet. And so the Merkava is a dynamic conduit, a linguistic vision of geometric forms. Ezekiel wrote, "In the land of Kasdim, there the hand of Yehovah was upon me." As we can see, the spirit of Yehovah, diameter 240, defines the mathematical, geometrical, and cognitive space of the throne of honor, Kiseh HaKavod. Honor, kavod, equals 32 in Hebrew. We can read it right now, presently. Hov, 16. Yehovah, 26. 22 Hebrew letters. Star of David made of light, 207. The living spirit in the sacred creatures, Chai, equals 18. Ezekiel writes, "And above the image of the chair, there was the image of Adam, and the image of the honor of Yehovah." Honor 32, Yehovah 26 are parts of the Merkava. Image, Demat 444, is the gematria value of Mikdash, temple. Therefore, this is Demat Yehovah, the image of Yehovah, the temple of Yehovah, and the chair of honor, Kavod, 32, is a dominant measurement in this sacred space of the spirit of Yehovah, divine by diameter 240. The division into 12 comes naturally as it presents the 12 tribes of Israel, sons of Jacob. They construct a clear mental vision of all the holy elements of the spirit of Yehovah, the wheels within the wheels, the 22 letters, the name of God, light, honor, Chai, alive, and in plural, Chayot, livings. And I saw the living creatures, and there was one wheel on earth for the sacred livings. And when each living is alive, Chai, 18, the holy creatures, Chayot, HaKodesh, is the living force in the wheel of Chai, 18. As we can see the wheel of the holy livings, the blue wheel within a wheel, appear in the vision on both sides of the word honor, 32, Kavod, relating to Yehovah, 26. These are undeniable and precise facts. Ezekiel writes, "And when I saw it, I fell on my face, and I heard a speaking voice." Ezekiel describes a dramatic, poetic, and mysterious chariot, but since he uses the Hebrew language, we can still see what he meant via Hebrew geometry. It still shows us the eternal, unchangeable, celestial map, true then and true now. Hebrew is a natural, transparent language, relevant since the creation of Adam, the first person who understood the language. And Hebrew geometry described the structural underlying plan of the celestial stage. Christian esoterica was founded on the basis of the Hebrew chariot. For example, the ancient book of Enoch, number 1, found in Ethiopia, demonstrates the influence of Hebrew and of the biblical Enoch on Christianity, and indeed the name Enoch is part of the Merkava. Enoch walked with God, was taken by him, and ascended to heaven, and according to Kabbalistic tradition, he returned to earth in order to teach human beings a reckoning of time, mathematics, and natural order. His lifespan, 365 years, indicates the number of days a year. Enoch appears in the Chariot as a frame for the cross of St. George's Church, the most important of the 12 churches excavated in Ethiopia in 1185 AD by Lalibela, who prior to that spent 25 years in Jerusalem and probably learned from Jews, Christians, and Muslims. This is another proof that Christian symbols are taken from the Hebrew geometric archive. To summarize, the Hebrew chariot presents the decimal theory of nature, a unified field of prosaic sentences, mathematical equations, and geometric forms. Merkava is an inspiration, a map of the consciousness which allows insight into Hebrew. The Linguistic Chariot is a drawing of facts, a visual theory of Hebrew, and a visual description of the meanings. It is a cognitive sacred space with rational explanation. It can be received as a colossal cosmic drama, or as the point of theological singularity, or a technological singularity. Perhaps this is the transcendental object awaiting in the future, the grand attractor situated at the end of days. The chariot can sound like the cosmic giggle or the divine comedy, but it proves that Hebrew is intended to convey knowledge and meaning, and not to create religion, nor to spread a fear of God. Yireh Elohim in Hebrew means the one who sees Elohim, since Yireh means lir'ot, to see with your eyes, with accordance to the final sentence of the Bible. Le'einei kol Israel literally means in sight of all Israel, and since the inner logic of the Hebrew language is absolute, the question is, how many degrees of freedom of thought are necessary for Hebrew speakers in order to change their linguistic intuition and reading comprehensions when holding the Hebrew Bible?